It's good to see all you guys and hear you worship, and it's always encouraging from the Lord. And just want us to move into this time and begin to consider some things as we're in our series, A Million Little Miracles. And last week we looked at the idea of changing our perspective and seeing God in the massiveness of who He is, that He's the one that calls out the stars by name. He's the one who the heavens declare who He is. That's in all this things and wonder that many times we question. We may question God's promises, but the reality is promises are always faithful and always true. And tonight we go to a much more personal place for many of us, I think, and where we often sometimes can feel and even wonder and have thoughts of, is God really there? I just encourage you to think about for just a moment as we begin our time together. Have you ever felt overlooked? Maybe it was at work. Maybe you applied for a promotion or applied for an opportunity or applied for a job, and you felt like you were really qualified, because you knew the other person. And you knew in that moment, surely I'm going to be the one that gets it. And then you feel like you're overlooked. You don't get the promotion. You don't get the opportunity. Maybe it's in your family. There's been times where maybe you felt overlooked. Somebody else got something you felt you deserved, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's as you walk into a crowded room and you feel like overlooked in that room because you feel kind of like awkward and out of place. We have those moments, sometimes even in our faith at times, and there's times where we can feel overlooked and wondered if anybody even notices we're here. Sometimes we even do that with a simple text message. When you send that text message and you see the word delivered, and then maybe it even turns to red, and then there's no response. And you're wondering, did they see it? Are they said whatever? And we start to question our mind, and then we begin to go to all kind of different places. And we're like, what do we do right now? And we have those moments in our life where we feel uncomfortable. I remember when I moved, and I remember moving from one state to Alabama, and I remember moving from a place where I was known. Now, not like influencer known, or not like YouTuber known like we are nowadays, but people knew, I knew people, they knew me, and then I moved here, and it was like no one knew me. And I can remember that feeling uncomfortable and awkward even at times as I'd come into rooms, because 2 weeks before I started high school, I moved here. And I remember just the feeling of what it felt like when I didn't know anybody. And you feel those moments of unknowing. And if we're all honest, I believe, because all of us, we want to be known. We want to be noticed. We want to be seen. But yet there's moments in time, I believe, in our lives. Sometimes, I believe, when we even feel that way about God. We believe God is big. We believe He's massive. We believe He created the universe and hung the stars in the sky and holds everything together. But there's a tension in that for a lot of us. We believe that God is big. But sometimes we wonder, does He notice me? Does He see me? Does He see the problems? Does He know the problems and the things that I'm going through? The things that cause frustration in my life. The prayers that I prayed, that I've been praying for so long and wondering, is He heard yet? Because I don't see a lot moving. Or maybe even the details of my life. Is He fully aware of the details? And listen, for some of us, we're more detailed than other people. And do we consider and we wonder, is God even seeing this? Because it's easy to believe that God is powerful and mighty. It's often hard to believe, is He personal? That He's a God who desires to be and to know and to be a part of our lives. That He sees us in our innermost parts of who we are. Sometimes it can seem like He's far and far off. But if you got a Bible, I want to invite you to grab it out. Psalms 19 is where we're going to start at. And then we're going to move to the New Testament, to a passage about Jesus in just a little bit. But David was most likely the one who wrote this psalm. And it was in this song, as he was writing, we most likely think it was probably either early morning or late at night, as he was either watching the sun come up or the stars come out and the moon come out. that he writes these words in Psalm 19, verse 1. And it says this. It says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. The skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day, they continue to speak. Night after night, they make him known. They speak without a sound or a word. Their voice is never heard, yet their message has gone through the earth, and their words to all the world. The fact is, creation screams that God is big, he is mighty, he is massive. The skies declare who he is. The stars call out his name. The sun, in all of its brilliance, declare the glory and the massiveness and the weight, as that word glory literally means the weight of who he is. That he is so big. But I love the part in verse 3 and 4 where it says, they speak without a sound or a word. I only know a few people that can speak without a sound or a word. When I was growing up in Louisville, Kentucky, Ormsby Heights Baptist Church, we had a youth section. Now, it wasn't like roped off for the youth, but we just claimed the front and middle section of the church. And we would take up 3 or 4 rows of that church. And I can remember that sometimes our pastor, Dallas Vincent was his name, he would get to preaching. And I'm sure none of you have ever wandered off, lost concentration, stopped listening as I'm talking. I'm sure none of you have done that. Well, as teenagers, there was a moment where we would be sitting there, and maybe the message got a little bit, over our heads or whatever it may be, or we just thought it would be a really great idea. Because, see, we didn't have phones back then. We couldn't text each other. We would use the worship guides that we got, or they were called the bulletins back then. And there'd be pins in all of the seats because you had your envelope where you would write, which we have at the back and stuff, but it was different. It would have all different kinds of things on there that you would check off, you would write, and then you would, when the offering plate came by, you'd put it in it. Well, those things became very great instruments of notes, not to take often, but to pass. And I can remember we would begin to pass those. You'd pass them under your arms. You'd lay them beside your leg. The other person picked them up. You'd look at them and write it. Because you tried to be most inconspicuous. Because I remember Ann Allen. And when we were passing notes in the front of the church, that when she saw it, she looked over. And she didn't have to say a word because her eyes said the only words that I was going to die after that service. And it was in that moment that I recognized she said all she ever needed, and she never spoke a word. And let's be real, if you're a parent or you've seen that look probably from a parent at some point, you've experienced that, and you know exactly, and they don't even say words. And I just imagine that that's what's happening in this moment. The heavens are declaring, now not with a glare now they may be like a glare like, you should know this by now. But the reality and the truth of it is they literally speak without ever uttering a word. But their message goes forth that it declares the glory of God. And that's the power of creation. That's the power of his work. And we don't ever want to lose sight of that power. That the heavens are constantly speaking. They never stop speaking of the things and the glory of God. That the message of God's goodness and glory goes out through all the world, both day and night and day, everywhere, throughout all the earth and through every galaxy. That his name is being proclaimed and his glory is being made known. You and I would understand God is bigger than you could think, larger than you can comprehend, and more powerful than you could ever realize. That's how great He is. That's how mighty He is. And sometimes we can get lost in the grandeur of who He is and in the creation as we look out on it. Then we begin to think, can He really personally care about me? He has all these things to take care of because we only see things in our finite mind. To not understand how great He really is and how massive that He would so care. Because the good news is, that's not the end of the story. It's not the whole story. God is great. He is mighty. He is powerful. But if you'll move over to the New Testament real quick with me. In Luke chapter 19. In Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12. I want to help you understand to see what was happening. Jesus was growing in influence. He's growing in, like, people are seeing His miracles and they're following after Him. More and more followers are coming after and running after. And listen, it says so much so in this passage that there were thousands of people around Him. At that moment in time, everybody's clamoring to get to Him, literally stepping on each other. I imagine it's like a concert, if you've ever been to one, where everybody's pushing forward to the front and you feel like you're about to get mobbed in that moment. And you're like, you need a little like elbow moment to get the people out from behind you. And I just imagine that's what it's like, because everybody's pressing in. They want to hear Jesus. Because if somebody starts healing people, and you see somebody who you knew a moment ago was blind and now they can see, somebody who was lame is now healed, somebody who couldn't even walk and is now standing up and walking, you're going to stand up and take notice. And they want to get as close to that as they can. And it's interesting in this moment that Jesus turns and He looks at His disciples. And He gives them a warning about the Pharisees and the religious leaders of the day. Because these people, they had power. They had status. And lots of people feared them. They feared their judgment. They feared their power. They feared what they could do to them. But the problem is, with the religious, even of today, it's never the issue of their exterior commitment to God. It's the interior life that no one sees. That's where the real issue lies. And that's where the real issue lies for all of us as well, too. And as He's sitting there telling them, hey, because people had great fear of what these people could do, listen, they were going to be the ones ultimately who were going to put Jesus to death. And Jesus tees up this massive moment of understanding both how massively powerful God really is, but also how personal God really is. Because remember, everybody thought, the Pharisees and the religious leaders of that day, they had power, they had authority, they feared their judgment. And Jesus tells His followers in that moment, don't be afraid of the person who can take your physical body and put it to death. Don't fear that person. Your fear should be in God. Your fear should be in the Lord, because He has the power to not only take the body, but the power as well over the final destination of every human being on the face of the planet. So don't fear these people, but instead fear the Lord. Because He is mighty and He is powerful. But this is the major plot twist in this moment, that God is both powerful and mighty, but is also personal. In verse 6, it says this. What is the price of 5 sparrows? 2 copper coins. Yet God does not forget a single one of them. And they and the very hairs on your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to God than a whole flock of sparrows. He opens with this rhetorical question. Have you ever asked a rhetorical question? It's the one you don't expect an answer. It's the one that, hey, you want the person to begin to think about what you're saying. And He opens this, and we need to get the context of, I believe, this question, because I believe it helps us understand some things in this moment. See, because during that day and time, one copper coin would have gotten you 2 sparrows. So how many would 2 coins or 2 copper coins get you then? If you do the math. 4, right? So, but for this person, whoever, whether they negotiated the deal or whether they just viewed it as an opportunity for the person who was selling these, that 5th really meant nothing. It was easy to throw away. Here's a 5. Maybe it was to kind of, sweeten the deal. Or maybe it was a negotiation. Okay, I'll pay for 4. Just give me the 5th for free. Which usually means the 5th has zero to little no value. So that person didn't even care about it. But see, Jesus said, yet God doesn't forget a single one. Because Jesus knew how much 4 cost. But the 5th one doesn't go unnoticed. And that is good news for all of us. Because no matter what you may feel like, if you felt thrown away today, you feel like you're the 5th sparrow, that you somehow got overlooked or were just trash to be thrown out, I want to tell you that in God's eyes and in who God is, there is no trash and there are no throwaways. And that's the powerful word, I believe, for us. Don't miss that today. Whether you feel like the 5th sparrow or not, He knows everyone. He knew all 5. No matter what the world may say, here's a 5th, He knows. And that's the good news, that the same God who names the stars also numbers your hairs. The average person has between 90,000 and 145,000 hairs. Some of you have more or the latter. And we won't go into that right now, but some of you have more and less, and that's okay. The good news isn't the point of whether you have more or less. The good news is He knows everyone. And He counts them all. He's got a number for everyone. And that is the good news of the gospel. The good news that God isn't, listen, He's not estimating, He's not guessing, but He knows. He's not wondering, He knows every hair on your head. Listen, you may want to write this down. God's greatness does not limit His nearness, but it proves it. God's greatness, it does not limit His nearness, but it proves it. He is so great. He is so great. And in that yet, He is so near. I want to read a couple of passages to you. Psalms 139. It's not going to come on the screen today. I encourage you to go back. You're welcome to write it down, put it in a text or whatever, and go back. You should read all the passages again to check, listen, and see where God may even continue to reveal, hopefully, what we've discussed on Sundays. But Psalms 139 says this in verse 1, "O Lord, you have examined my heart, and you know everything about me. You know when I sit down and when I stand up. You know my thoughts, even when I'm far away. You see me when I travel and when I rest at home. You know everything I do. You know what you know what I'm going to say even before I say it, Lord." That's how intimate God knows you. He knows the words you're going to say before you even say it. He's examined you inside and out. He's fully aware, listen, of all your bumps and knots and bruises and past and presents and futures. He knows everything about you, and yet He still loves you. And He desires to be near to you and I. Isaiah chapter 40, a portion of it we put on magnets and on the backs of cars and posted on walls. But in Isaiah chapter 40, starting in verse 26, it says this, "Look up into the heavens. Who created all the stars? He brings them out like an army, one after another, calling each by its name. Because of his great power and incomparable strength, not a single one is missing. O Jacob, how can you say, the Lord does not see your troubles? O Israel, how can you say God ignores your rights? Have you never heard, have you never understood that the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of all the earth? He never grows weary, he never goes weak or weary. No one can measure the depths of his understanding. He gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. Even youths will become weary, weak and tired, and the young men will fall in exhaustion. But those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles, and they will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. That is the good news, that the God who created the heavens and the earth, who knows everything, who knows we grow weak and weary, and thanks be to him that he never does. And he will renew our strength when we feel weak. He will bring hope in hopeless situations. And when you're in that moment where you feel like all the world is crashing in, or maybe where you feel completely unnoticed, that God is there. That God is there, and he is near. He is near in those moments. I want to give you a few things to think about as we consider our time this evening. One is that you would remember God is bigger than you imagined. We read that the heavens declare the glory of God. God is not small, and he is not limited. He is not limited by our view or our ideas. He is far greater than anything we could ever imagine. He is bigger than even the thing. Listen, you take your imagination to as far as it can go and just multiply that by infinity. And that is God. That's how great he is. That's why last week we spent time talking about a perspective changing. That we'd see God for how great he is, because then when problems come, it doesn't mean those problems disappear. It just means they're much smaller in the light of who he is. That we can face them with strength. We can walk through them with the strength of the Lord when he is in us and with us. So God is bigger than you can imagine. The second thing is God is closer than you feel. It's like Luke 12, we just read a moment ago. He sees the sparrows. He knows your details, even the hairs on your head. God's closer than you feel. And let's be real, sometimes today you may have even walked in this room and God feels distant from you. Thankfully, God is not defined by our feelings. He is close. Our feelings will often lie to us. It's why we've often chased after bad relationships. And thanks be to God, he rescued us from some of them. And if that bad one is sitting next to you, don't look at him right now. Anyways, I'm just playing. That was a joke. Sorry. You'll catch it later, some of you. It was probably bad. But he is true that he is near. And there will be days when you don't feel it. And some days you need to go back to the moment when you knew he was the close. Not felt, when you knew. And it's right now that we know the truth of the word, that God is close. It says he sits closer than a brother. But that's how close he really is. You're not lost in a crowd to God. You're not just another face in the crowd. But you are important to him. And the third thing that you would know, God values you more than you believe. You have more value to God than you often believe. Because let's be real, there's moments that here Satan comes and writes narratives in our heart that somehow we don't have value because of our past, or because of our mistakes, or because of our thoughts, or because of the situation, or because we didn't measure up, or whatever it may be. And we can have those moments. But what I want you to know is that you have value to God. If some of you've ever traveled on a plane before, you know you get a limited amount of things unless you really want to pay money. Well, I'm cheap and I don't like to pay some money, okay? So just know I try to carry the least amount as possible. But almost always, I would always say probably always, not almost always, carry a carry-on. And what do you put in the carry-on? Your most important things. Because have you ever gone on a plane trip and you had a bag that you checked and it didn't make it to where you were going, or it came later? Maybe I'm the only unfortunate soul here. Let me tell you, it's frustrating. So I carry some important things. Now, I know I can't carry everything. I got some things I'd like to carry. They're important to me, but I can't. You know, I got to check those or whatever. But the reality is, and listen, we hold that. We cherish that bag. So much so that what do when we get through TSA? We put it on the conveyor belt, and do you just like turn around and walk away? No, you watch that thing go all the way through. And then you wonder, like, what's he looking at? What can that guy really see in that bag? I'm wondering right now. And then it keeps on going through, and you don't, as soon as it comes out, you don't let 7 people get in front of you. You go get your bag. Because you're going to make sure you get your stuff back that's important. Because that's got important things in there. Sometimes it's good. They tell you, hey, you should carry like an extra outfit. Because if your bag's don't act, I guess you could, a 7-day trip, I guess you could wear the same outfit every day. But whatever, figure that out later. But the reality is we care for that bag. We cherish that bag. We hold that bag because it has stuff that's valuable to us. We don't let that bag get out of sight. We don't put it in anybody else's hands that we don't trust. We're going to keep that bag and hold it close because it's important. Those things are important to us. And listen, if God's packing a bag today for a trip, I believe each one of us, all humanity, who know and follow Jesus today, you'd be in that carry-on. And he doesn't let it get out of his sight. He doesn't let you out of his sight. He knows, listen, that's why we read just a moment ago, David talked about, even when I go away, he still knows. Even when I walk away, he's still aware of where I'm at. And that's the good news of the gospel, that God's fully aware. And he desires to be near and to be close with us. So practically, 3 things I want to give you that you can do. I pray that you'll do these. Maybe even tonight before you go to bed. Throughout this week, I would encourage you to consider, what can we do with all this that we've just learned and thought about? I pray that the first thing, that you'll slow down enough to notice God. That you'll slow down enough to notice God. That you'll sweep some distractions aside, become more aware of who he is and what he's doing around us. Because here's what I know, God is speaking and God is near, but often, you know what's interesting? We're just scrolling. For some of us, we need to put down the device, stop the scroll, and look out and notice. Look out to what God is doing. Who knows, maybe even have a conversation with somebody. And we may go, that person that we did not maybe always recognize as a miracle that God has put in our life, we actually begin to recognize, oh, they're a miracle too. And that's sometimes hard. It's not always easy. But when God does it, if we'll stop and take notice, if we'll just slow down this week and just take notice of what God is doing. The second thing, that you believe that God sees you. Not just humanity, not just the church, but that God, he literally sees you. But you personally, you would truly believe that. And sometimes we have to tell ourselves that. To believe that. That we would take the time. We wouldn't just slow down enough to notice, but we'd also believe that God sees us. And the last thing practically is trust God with your details. Listen, if God knows every hair on your head, God already knows every detail. He can handle every detail that you've got in your life. Every concern you may have, every problem you're facing, He is fully aware. And trust Him. Trust Him in the midst of those. This week, I challenge you that every time maybe you feel anxious, fearful, uncertain, overlooked, frustrated, that maybe you would just say these words. God sees me. Because some of us came in the room maybe questioning, does God see you? And not just on the big picture, but I mean like really sees you. Does He really care about you? And sometimes we need to take moments. Because listen, the enemy is going to come with all different kinds of lies. And we need to remind ourselves that God is bigger than those. God sees us in the innermost parts of who we are. Because some of you don't doubt God is real. But you may doubt He's paying attention. You may doubt, is He listening and is He aware? But today I believe God wants to remind all of us that yes, He is big. Yes, He is mighty. But He wants to remind you that I see you and I know you and I haven't forgotten you. Not one sparrow is forgotten. And yet you are worth far more than a whole flock of sparrows. And do not ever, ever forget that. Don't ever forget that. So, for you and I, this evening, as we move into a time where we can respond to the Lord and maybe what He's saying in our hearts, where do you feel unseen right now? And nobody else may know this, but maybe it's just a burden that you've been holding on to in your heart or your mind. Maybe you're in the midst of a struggle, externally, maybe internally, I don't know. And you just feel like, I'm the only one dealing with this. Or maybe you've been in the middle of waiting. Like, God, I'm waiting, I've been praying, I've been asking, but I'm just waiting. And it's caused you even to wonder, is God hearing me? Is God seeing me? And maybe you find yourself in the midst of even some pain. Pain in a relationship, maybe pain at your work, pain in life itself, physical pain. And what I want you to know is God sees that too. And He sees you right where you're at. And He wants you to know He's there with you in the midst. And I wish I could say that all pain will be gone tomorrow. All waiting will be over, because I'm ready for some waiting to end. Or all anxiety will be gone. That depression will cease. That the struggle will end. But we do live in a world encumbered by sin. Sin that often entangles us even too. But the good news is that just as Jesus said before He left His disciples, take heart. Take heart. For I have overcome the world. It's one of the most hopeful messages in all of Scripture. That one day we will no longer face pain, heartache, depression, anxiety, worry, waiting, or frustration. Because everything will pale and pass away in his presence. But what I want you to know is right now, he sees you in the midst of wherever you're at. And he wants to walk with you all the way through. Because you matter.